ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरे शमतम नमाम्यहम. We are studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and we studied the last chapter called the Atman. Today again the name is Atman with some addition. The Atman, its bondage and freedom. And though date-wise it's a previous lecture, but it has been given here. The date, it is delivered in New York, 8th January 1896. A little external things let me tell you. Why the London lectures are first, American lectures are next, why? Secondly, in London lectures we have the dates correctly and delivered in London. While in the American lectures, in one lecture we have delivered in New York. In all others it is delivered in America and no dates. Because the book was published by Mr. Sturdy in England. In America, Swamiji's friends and devotees were trying to publish a book. But Swami used to send all his lectures to London after they were stenotyped here to Mr. Sturdy. And he was the organizer of Swamiji's lectures in London. So, Sturdy published this book, and that is why the American lectures he has given in a general way. That is the reason. And that is why the London lectures are first. Because though these lectures are earlier, but because it is Mr. Sturdy's publication, and because before the American publication he already brought it out. So Swamiji and his devotees in America had to accept that as the book. And that is why the arrangement is like that. And we have seen that the London lectures are far superior. Anyway, now we have this lecture, the Atman, its bondage and freedom, and those who are interested in details, it is delivered in New York on 8th January 1896. Now, let us see what Swamiji wants to say. We have seen that Atman is the name of the real nature of man. Its bondage means it feels as if it is bound due to the wrong association with the body-mind complex. Body-mind complex is material, and anything material can never be free. And Atman is consciousness by nature, and it can never be bound. So, because in association with the body-mind complex, it feels identified with them, and it feels I am bound. And when it regains, when it realizes that my real nature is only consciousness, then it is free. It has nothing to do with bondage, nothing to do with matter. It is not only consciousness, existence, consciousness, bliss itself. So a blissful, free condition it enjoys, it understands, it realizes. And so, ignorance or the duration or the effect of wrong knowledge in our life, that is how we begin life, because by nature this Atman is feeling identified with body and mind, individual, so that is what we are. But some kind Guru comes, and the Guru tells us, you are not that, realize your real nature, and then by his help, by the help of Vedantic text, we realize our own real nature, and we realize we are never bound, we are always free. That is the story being told in this lecture. According to the Advaita philosophy, there is only one thing real in the universe, which it calls Brahman. So in this lecture, in a very cut and dried, sharp, precise thing, Swamiji is telling everything. Every sentence is a point. He is not giving lot of this or that. He is giving straight away, precisely. So in one lecture, both the things he is telling. So according to the Advaita philosophy, there is only one thing real in the universe, which it calls Brahman. It calls Brahman because it is all-pervading and because it is transcendent also. Everything else is unreal. Straight away, he has started from this. According to the Advaita philosophy, which you have studied in so many lectures, this is, everything else is unreal. Manifested and manufactured out of Brahman by the power of Maya. So everything is one sentence. We have seen what is Maya. Maya, Swamiji has declared to be a statement of fact, but it's a power. In our life, we get deluded. It's a power. Devatma Shaktim. So, Brahman, from Brahman these things are manifested. Names and forms, and through names and forms the whole universe is simply was non-manifested, becomes manifested. And manufactured. You see, two terms are there. Huh? Manifested means through names and form. Manufactured means out of Brahman itself. Nimitta and Upadan Karan, technically. That the Brahman itself appears as this. Out of Brahman itself this world is made. It does not require a nature like the Sankhya or other people. Or the Dvaitis or Vishnadvaitis think of Prakriti. It does not require that. Atman itself manifests as this, and from Atman itself the Upadan Karan, the material cause. Example is given of the spider. Spider is the intelligent cause. It draws the material from within its stomach and makes the web. So, in that fashion, this example only, Atman only, he is manifested and manufactured. Universe is manifested and manufactured out of Atman through the power of Maya. That means it is a statement of fact. That is how we can understand. It is a statement of fact that we see the universe. It is a statement of fact that we do not see Brahman, we see the universe. So manifested and manufactured out of Brahman by the power of Maya means it is a statement of fact that we experience it. To reach back to that Brahman is our goal. Because Brahman is ever blissful, ever free. Anything which you can put as perfection, infinitude, purnatva, all that is the very nature of Brahman. And we have apparently lost it because we are wrongly, our knowledge is wrong. So we have to regain. To reach back to that Brahman is our goal. We are each one of us that Brahman, that reality, plus this Maya. We are not parts of that reality, we are that reality, but with wrong knowledge. So, we are each one of us that Brahman, that reality, plus this Maya. If we can get rid of this Maya or ignorance, then we become what we really are. So it is not to gain something from outside. Karma and everything, upasana, that gives us something from outside. Here we have a wrong knowledge which we have to lose. And when it is gone, we are what we are. That means we have never lost it. According to this philosophy, each man consists of three parts. Now, the present state of affairs, statement of fact. So, from Vedantic angle, he examines the facts. The body, the internal organ or the mind, and behind that, what is called the Atman. From Brahman everything has come, we have to go back to Brahman, but the present situation is that there is body with which we are identified, inside there is mind which we are identified, and inside that is our real nature called Atman. So the term, let me once more tell you what I told you in the very beginning of the classes of Jnana Yoga. On the first day of my going to my Guruji, he through an example gave me the highest knowledge. And that is one example. There is Mr. Subodh Mukherjee. He is executive engineer. So in the office he is called XN. His friends call him Mr. Mukherjee. In the house he is Subodh Babu. Now these three are not different persons. The three names are due to three frames of reference. In the reference to the office work he is doing, he is called XN. Friends know him as Mr. Mukherjee, and in the house they know him as Subodh Babu. After giving this example, my teacher told me that Brahman, Atman and Ishvara are three names. When we think of it as the reality of the world, we think of it. It is same. We think of it as the reality of the world, we call it Brahman. And when we think of it as the reality of individual, not only mine, yours, everybody, individual's reality, it is called Atman. And when we think who rules this world, who governs this world, that very reality governs this world, we call it Ishvara. So these three are names of the same reality. Swamiji is now bringing us to that, that in the present state, we are body plus mind plus Atman. Behind that, what is called the Atman, the self. Self means, with capital S, our real nature. There is no equivalent in English, so the German people tried this by calling it the real self, by capital S. Soul in English is not at all equivalent of Atman. Soul is Jiva. Soul is I consciousness. So, rejecting that word, these days the trend is to put Atman as Atman. Many Sanskrit words have no English equivalent and they are used in Sanskrit only these days. But to make it give some idea of the people who already have some idea, this German word self, capital S, is used. The body is the external coating and the mind is the internal coating of the Atman, who is the real perceiver. Coating or like a sheath. So external covering, that is coating. When we see body, we do not see our mind or Atman. Inside there is another coating, that is mind. When we see the mind, we do not see the Atman. When we see the reality, we call it Atman. Who is the real perceiver? That means consciousness is only in the Atman. Mind and body are material. The real enjoyer here means experiencer. So the consciousness being that, the perceiver, the enjoyer, the being in the body who is working the body by means of the internal organ of the mind. So on the individual level, through the mind it is working on the body and getting interacted with the world. The Atman is the only existence in the human body which is immaterial. Now, this world has two opposite meanings. Immaterial means of no consequence, that is what we think. Because there is no matter there. And in Vedanta, immaterial means not matter but consciousness. So, immaterial, the Atman is the only existence in the human body which is immaterial. Because it is immaterial, it cannot be a compound. Matter consists of so many things together, so many elements make compound. But consciousness cannot have any matter, it cannot be compound. It does not obey the law of cause and effect. Law of cause and Swamiji has explained this in various lectures, but the law of cause and effect works on matter, not on consciousness. And so it is immortal. And so it is eternal. It never is born, it never dies, it is always there. That which is immortal can have no beginning, always there. Because everything with a beginning must have an end. That is what we see in the world. Beginning means manufactured, compounded. It breaks down. It also follows that it must be formless, because form is out of matter. There cannot be any form without matter. Everything that has form must have a beginning and an end. We have none of us seen a form which had not a beginning and will not have an end. So that is our experience. Form means it has been made and one day it will break. A form comes out of a combination of force and matter. Matter is there, force works on it and gives it a form. This chair has a peculiar form, that is to say, a certain quantity of matter is acted upon by a certain amount of force and made to assume a particular shape. The shape is the result of a combination of matter and force. The combination cannot be eternal. There must come to every combination a time when it will dissolve, decompose. So all forms have a beginning and an end. We know our body will perish. It had a beginning and it will have an end. But the self having no form cannot be bound by the law of beginning and end. It is existing from infinite time. Just as time is eternal, so is the self of man eternal. Time is eternal means time always is there. Our world begins in time. Time does not begin. Along with the world it begins. So time is eternal. Now, self is more eternal than time in a way, because whether the time is counted or not, self is always there. Just as time is eternal, so is the self of man eternal. Secondly, it must be all-pervading. It is only form that is conditioned and limited by space. That which is formless cannot be confined in space. So, time-wise infinite, space-wise infinite. So, according to Advaita Vedanta, the self, the Atman, in you, in me, in everyone, is omnipresent. You are as much in the sun now as in this earth, as much in England as in America. But the self acts through the mind and the body, where they are, its action is visible. So we see the action of the self where it is visible through mind and body. Actually it is all-pervading. The very idea that we are all-pervading will make us free that moment. We are not confined to this body and mind. What to speak of this room or this building? Each work we do, each thought we think produces an impression. You can add, each talk we talk. So, mentally, vocally, physically, whatever we do produces an impression. Called in Sanskrit sanskara, upon the mind. Impression is on the mind. And the sum total of these impressions becomes the tremendous force which is called character. So what is our character? Sum total of all the impressions in our mind. The character of a man is what he has created for himself. It is due to what we acted or spoken or thought before. It is the result of the mental and physical actions that he has done in his life. So vocal is included in physical here. The sum total of the sanskaras is the force which gives a man the next direction after death. The mind does not die immediately with the body. And so the direction at the point of death is the combined result of all the impressions. Swamiji is explaining that now. A man dies, the body falls away and goes back to elements But the sanskaras remain adhering to the mind, which being made of fine material does not dissolve. So this one has to understand fine material. That means we cannot perceive, the yogis or the jnanis do perceive. That is called fine. From that mind is made. Because the finer the material, the more persistent it is, long duration. But the mind also dissolves in the long run, and that is what we are struggling for. When mind dissolves, when we realize our real nature, then impressions are not there and the mind dissolves. And that is what we are seeking for. Death does not change the matter. Another body will come. But when we realize our real nature, mind will go away. In this connection, the best illustration that comes to my mind is that of the whirlwind. Different currents of air coming from different directions. Example Swamiji is giving for us, meet and at the meeting point become united and go on rotating. As they rotate, they form a body of dust, drawing in bits of paper, straw, etc. at one place, only to drop them and go on to another. So we see, we call it ghost. You see, ghost is there, ghost is there. In the corner of a room, it is whirling. And then the ghost has gone there. That means it has dropped the things here. The form has not gone there. But it has raised the storm, the dust and a bit of paper there. So, to drop them and go on to another and so go on rotating, raising and forming bodies out of the materials which are before them. Even so, the forces called prana in Sanskrit come together and form the body and the mind out of matter and move on until the body falls down. When there is other materials to make another body, and when this falls, another rises, and thus the process goes on. Force cannot travel without matter. So when the body falls down, the mind stuff remains. Prana in the form of sanskaras acting on it, and then it goes on to another point, raises up another world from fresh material and begins another motion, and so it travels from place to place until the force is all spent. Force is all spent only when we realize our real nature. And then it falls down, ended. So when the mind will end, be broken to pieces entirely without leaving any sanskara, we shall be entirely free, and until that time we are in bondage. And that is our knowledge, that we are in bondage. Until then the Atman is covered by the whirl of the mind and imagines it is being taken from place to place. So only the wrong knowledge comes. Some just called it imagination. It is not true, so it is called imagination. Imagines it is being taken from place to place. When the world falls down, the Atman finds that it is all pervading. It can go where it likes. That this is all pervading. So wherever it wants to feel the presence, it can feel. It can go means it can feel its presence anywhere. It can go where it likes, is entirely free, and is able to manufacture any number of minds or bodies it likes. That is the gods. It likes, but until then it can go only with the world. This freedom is the goal towards which we are all moving. So goal of life is freedom from the bondage made out of wrong knowledge. So two terms Swamiji has used for the goal. First is we want to go back to Brahman. Secondly, he has called it freedom is the goal. Suppose there is a ball in this room, so what force it carries out, for that Swamiji's example now. Suppose there is a ball in this room and we each have a mallet in our hands and begin to strike the ball, giving it hundreds of blows, driving it from point to point until at last it flies out of the room. With what force and in what direction will it go out? These will be determined by the forces that have been acting upon it all through the room. All the different blows that have been given will have their effects. Each one of our actions, mental and physical, is such a blow. The human mind is a ball which is being hit. We are being hit about this room. Mind is being hit. Then he says we are being hit, because that is our wrong knowledge. We are being hit about this room of the world all the time, and our passage out of it is determined by the force of all these blows. In each case, the speed and direction of the ball is determined by the hits it has received. So all our actions in this world will determine our future birth. Our present birth, therefore, is the result of our past. So from analogy, we have seen that this will determine the future, so this has been determined by the past. This is one case. Another way to explain our real nature and our statement of fact. So this is one chain. This is one case. Another example Swamiji is giving here. Suppose I give you an endless chain in which there is a black link and a white link alternately, without beginning and without end. And suppose I ask you the nature of the chain. At first you will find a difficulty in determining its nature, the chain being infinite at both ends. But slowly you find out it is a chain. That means repetition. You soon discover that this infinite chain is a repetition of the two links, black and white, and these multiplied infinitely becomes a whole chain. If you know the nature of one of these links, you know the nature of the whole chain, because it is a perfect repetition. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, like that the chain goes on. All our lives, past, present and future, form as it were an infinite chain, as it were, an example is it. Without beginning and without end, each link of which is one life, with two ends, birth and death, that is that white and black link. What we are and do here is being repeated again and again. Nothing is new. With but little variations. So if we know these two links, we shall know all the passages we shall have to pass through in this world. We see therefore that our passage into this world has been exactly determined by our previous passages. Similarly, we are in this world by our own action. Just as we go out with the sum total of our present actions upon us, so we see that we came into it with the sum total of our past actions upon us. That which takes us out is the very same thing that brings us in. What brings us in? Our past deeds. What takes us out? Our present deeds here. And so on, and on we go. Like the caterpillar, another example. Like the caterpillar that takes the thread from its own mouth and builds its cocoon and at last finds itself caught inside the cocoon, like the silkworm. The thread comes out of itself, it views around itself, it is caught inside. And people gather the silk. We have bound ourselves by our own actions. We have thrown the network of our actions around ourselves by identification. We have set the law of causation in motion, and we find it hard to get ourselves out of it because we are identified with matter. We have set the wheel in motion and we are being crushed under it. So this philosophy teaches us that we are uniformly being bound by our own actions, good or bad, both good actions also. The Atman never comes nor goes, real nature. It never born nor dies, because it is not matter at all. It is nature moving before the Atman. So what we call nature is only an appearance, unreal, some just told in the beginning. So it comes before us like dreams after dreams, like the clouds in the sky. It is nature moving before the Atman, and the reflection of the motion is on the Atman. And the Atman ignorantly thinks, that means wrongly thinks, that it is moving and not nature. When the Atman thinks that, it is in bondage. But when it comes to find, it, you see, think and find. Think is an imagination, find is knowledge. But when it comes to find, it never moves. That it is omnipresent, then freedom comes. The Atman in bondage is called Jiva. So the term Jiva comes. When the Atman feels identified with the body and mind, then it is called Jiva. Otherwise Jiva has no separate existence. Thus you see that when it is said that the Atman comes and goes, it is said only for facility of understanding. Just as for convenience in studying astronomy, you are asked to suppose that the sun moves around the earth. In the modern times we know the earth moves around the sun, but we calculate and think when the sun... So it is only a conventional knowledge that we are born and reborn. Though such is not the case, so the Jiva, the soul, comes to higher or lower states according to the karmas. That is the well-known law of reincarnation, and this law binds all creation. So it has to pass through various births, that is called reincarnation. People in this country think it too horrible that man should come up from an animal, those who do not believe in Darwin. Why? What will be the end of these millions of animals? Are they nothing? Swami is giving beautiful logic here. If we have a soul, so have they. And if they have none, neither have we. It is absurd to say that man alone has a soul and the animals none. I have seen men worse than animals. So, souls both have. Animals, if they are lower, man is lower than them. The human soul has sojourned to lower and higher forms. Self, soul. Soul is the body-mind complex identified with the self that rotates. The human soul has sojourned in lower and higher forms, migrating from one to another according to the sanskaras or impressions, but it is only in the highest form as man. Man is the highest form, not gods. That it attains to freedom, because there it can realize itself. The man form is higher than even the angel form. Angel is the Christian term for what we call Deva-Devata, gods. Angel form, and of all forms it is the highest. Man is the highest being in creation because he attains to freedom. That is the highest point, means possibility of attaining the freedom. Not just boasting we are the highest form, without struggling to get the freedom. All this universe was in Brahman, and it was as it were projected out of him. Another language is projected. From avyakta, it becomes vyakta. So projected out of him, and has been moving on to go back to the source from which it was projected. And the effort of everything in the universe is to go back to the source. Example, like the electricity which comes out of the dynamo, completes the circuit and returns to it. That is why electric current. The same is the case with the soul. Projected from Brahman, it passed through all sorts of vegetable and animal forms, and at last it is in man, and man is the nearest approach to Brahman. To go back to Brahman from which we have been projected is the great struggle of life. That is the sadhana. Whether people know it or not does not matter. Unconsciously everybody is struggling towards freedom. But we do not know. If we know, we struggle consciously and reach early. Whether people know it or not does not matter. In the universe, whatever we see of motion, of struggles in minerals or plants or animals is an effort to come back to the center and be at rest. There was an equilibrium, and that has been destroyed. That is Srishti. And all parts and atoms and molecules are struggling to find their lost equilibrium again. In this struggle, they are combining and reforming, giving rise to all the wonderful phenomena of nature. Beautiful explanation of the nature. All struggles and competitions in animal life, plant life, and everywhere else, all social struggles and wars are but expressions of that eternal struggle to get back to that equilibrium. So because we do not know right and wrong directions it takes. The going from birth to death, this traveling is what is called sansara in Sanskrit. Sarati means moves or is dragged. Some means nicely. Nicely we are dragged from form to form. That means badly we are dragged from form to form. That is called sansara. The round of birth and death literally. All creation literally means the word meaning of sansara is round of birth and death. All creation passing through the round will sooner or later become free. Ultimately, it gets released. The question may be raised that if we now another point of sadhana, this is the true. Everybody will come to freedom, from animal to man and man to freedom. The question may be raised that if we all shall come to freedom, why should we struggle to attain it? Because early or late is the question. If everyone is going to be free, we will sit down and wait. It is true that every being will become free sooner or later. No one can be lost. Nothing eternal heaven or eternal hell. Nothing can come to destruction. Everything must come up. If that is so, what is the use of our struggling? Now Swamiji gives two replies to this. Understand this. In the first place, the struggle is the only means that will bring us to the center. That means at some point we will have to struggle. We are all coming to freedom. How? Through struggle. So if we know it, we will struggle properly. That is the one reason. We are bound to struggle to come to freedom at some point of time. What is the use of going low and then coming up? In the first place, the struggle is the only means that will bring us to the center. And in the second place, we do not know why we struggle. Because our real nature is Brahman, it tries to manifest itself. We do not know, but we struggle. So all this is only consciously struggling in the proper direction. Otherwise, struggle takes us round and round. We have to. So, beautiful expression of knowledge, Vidya. Of thousands of men, some are awakened to the idea that they will become free, and then they struggle. The vast masses of mankind are content with material things. But there are some who awake and want to get back and have had enough of this playing down here. These struggle consciously, while the rest do it unconsciously. That is the difference between sadhak and humanity. The alpha and omega of Vedanta philosophy, in Greek, the omega is the last letter. So alpha and omega means A to Z. Of Vedanta philosophy is to give up the world. So the material world, the material body, the material mind, that is what Vedanta tells us. Give it up, you are always free. Giving up the unreal and taking the real. It is very natural for those who know. There is a great story. When Raja, king, came and saluted, prostrated before Brahman Swamiji. And he asked why? He said, you are such a big tyagi, renouncer. Then he said, in that case, I will have to roll down before you. You are much more tyagi than me. What I have given up, that which is unreal. What you have given up, that which is real. So, in this way he taught. That it is so natural for a man to try to drop this ignorance. Those who are enamored of the world may ask, why should we attempt to get out of it, to go back to the center? Suppose we have all come from God, but we find this world is pleasurable and nice. This idea of pleasurable and nice kills a man. Then why should we not rather try to get more and more of the world? Why should we try to get out of it? They say, look at the wonderful improvements going on in the world every day. How much luxury is being manufactured for it? This is very enjoyable. So the terms are luxury, enjoyable. That is bondage and bondage. Why should we go away and strive for something which is not this? Because it is real, but not this, which is unreal. The answer is that the world is certain to die. All this luxury and everything you will end in death. For that you are struggling. For that you are living. Or you want to live eternally. And so you have to struggle. To be broken into pieces, and that many times you have had the same enjoyments and same birth and death. All the forms which you are seeing now have been manifested again and again. And the world in which we live has been here many times before. I have been here and talked to you many times before. You will know that it must be so, and the very words that you have been listening to now, you have heard many times before in different kalpas. You know the funny incidents? That is, Shiva and Parvati are to be married. And before marriage they worship Ganapati. So it is asked, when Shiva and Parvati are married, how is Ganesha there? The answer is of a previous cycle. So this is going on repeating again and again. And many times more it will be the same. Souls are never different. The bodies have been constantly dissolving and recurring. Secondly, these things periodically occur. That means after many years it will happen. After again many years it will happen. Eternally we will be in bondage. Till we become free through right knowledge. Suppose here are 3 or 4 dice, and when we throw them, one comes up 5, another 4, another 3 and another 2. If we keep on throwing, there must come times when those very same numbers will recur. Go on throwing, and no matter how long may be the interval, those numbers must come again. It cannot be asserted in how many throws they will come again. This is the law of chance. Statistics, they calculate it. So with souls and their associations, however distant may be the period, the same combinations and dissolutions will happen again and again. He is drawing a terrible picture. The same birth, eating and drinking, and then death come round again and again. Some never find anything higher than the enjoyments of the world, but those who want to soar higher find that these enjoyments are never final, are only by the way. So there is something called awakening. Every form, let us say, beginning from the little worm and ending in man. Oh, we are coming to the end. Is like one of the cars of Chicago Ferris wheel, which is in motion all the time. But the occupants change. A man goes into a car, moves with the wheel and comes out. The wheel goes on and on. A soul enters one form, resides in it for a time, then leaves it and goes into another and quits that again for a third. Thus the round goes on till it comes out of the wheel and becomes free. So we have to come out of this body-mind complex. How? By knowledge. Now from this, astrology comes into place. Some way of future telling. Not only astrology depends upon stars. There is palmistry. So many people just by looking at you will tell you what is the future. So, why? Because it is going to be repeated. In India, people believe there is a Bhrigu Sangita in some special places. And if you give any man his father's name, they will find your name is this, your wife's name is this, you will be born in such and such, die in such and such, your son will be like that. So, the repeated cycle they put before you. Astonishing powers of reading the past and the future of a man's life have been known in every country and every age. The explanation is that so long as the Atman is within the realm of causation, though, now here, parenthetical clause has come. So long as it is this, due to wrong knowledge. Though its inherent freedom is not entirely lost and can assert itself even to the extent of taking the soul out of the causal chain as it does in the case of men who become free. So man becomes free at any point of time, he can come out of this chain, any point of time, just by asserting our real nature. Till then, its actions are greatly influenced by the causal law and thus makes it possible for men possessed with the insight to trace the sequence of effects to tell the past and the future. So long as there is desire or want. So that is the main crux. Due to our feeling separate from the world, we have a desire. Another name for desire is want. Remember, two words, need and want. We need very little. We want so many things. You know there is story, how much a landman needs? In some country, Russia or wherever. Tolstoy's story. People were told that you begin at sunrise and complete a circle and touch the same point at before sunset, that land is yours. A man out of greed walked so much on one side, then very little time to come back. And that 3, 4, so he had to come back almost from the same route. And lastly, When he came near it, he was exhausted. Before, just at the stroke of sunset, he fell down and touched his hand to the spot from where it started. But he was dead and he was buried. So which land he needed? That which was required to bury himself. So want and need. So long as there is desire or want, it is a sure sign that there is imperfection. A perfect free being cannot have any desire. God cannot want anything. If he desires, he cannot be God. He will be imperfect. So all the talk about God desiring this and that and becoming angry and pleased by turn is baby talk. But it means nothing. Therefore it has been taught by all teachers, desire nothing, give up all desires and be perfectly satisfied. If that is possible, you become free. Yada sarve pramuchante kama yasridishvita. Atha martyo amruto bhavati. Atra brahma samashnati. When the desires which are in the mind are given up, this mortal becomes immortal. He gets Brahman. A child comes into the world crawling and without teeth, and the old man gets out without teeth and crawling. The extremes are alike. But the one has an experience of the life before him, while the other has gone through it all. But the one has no experience of the life before him, while the other has gone through it all. When the vibrations of ether are very low, we do not see light. It is darkness. When very high, the result is also darkness. The extremes generally appear to be the same, though one is as distant from the other as the poles. The wall has no... So desirelessness is explaining now. It is not becoming matter, dead dull matter. It is becoming wise. To understand, to realize that we do not require anything. So he is explaining the difference between two extremes. The wall has no desires. And some people have this wrong understanding. What? To become the Gita, according to the Gita, Sita Prajna, we should be like wall. That is absolutely untrue. The wall has no desires, so neither has the perfect man. But the wall is not sentient enough to desire, while for the perfect man there is nothing to desire. He is all-pervading, he is all. There are idiots who have no desires in this world because their brain is imperfect. At the same time, the highest state in which we have no desire, but the two are opposite poles of the same existence. One is near the animal and the other near to God. Here he has ended the chapter. In a very crisp manner, he has described everything and shown how to go back to perfection. After this, one big lecture remains. You may say, how one? In the book Jnana Yoga, there are 3 more lectures, but the last 2 are not relevant to Jnana Yoga at all. The ideal of a universal religion, there's 2. In many languages, they are published as a separate book, Sarvajanin Dharma. We are not going to read them in the Jnana Yoga class. So today I am giving a little idea of what is going to come. I will talk to Shuddhidanji and tell you the finally. One more chapter, it's a big chapter. I don't know whether I will take 3 or 4 classes for it. And then I told you in the beginning that Song of Sannyasin is given in the beginning, but we shall be able to understand it at the end. So this big chapter, ignoring the last 2 chapters, we will go back to Song of Sannyasin. So all this would end before this month ends. Let us see. If he so wants, one yoga is left. We have read here Swamiji's Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, practical Vedanta was a part of Jnana Yoga actually, and Jnana Yoga. And Raj Yoga remains, We have dealt with Patanjali Yoga Sutras, but Swamiji's Jnana Yoga explanation is beautiful. That may be our future course. We shall tell you in time, when the time comes. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shantam Namamyaham. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.